Okay, in the first question of the paper, we're told that Dougie pays £460 for a new laptop, and the value of that laptop is going to fall by 26% each year, and they want us to calculate the expected value of the laptop after 3 years. What we need to do is take that original amount, 460, and multiply it by 1 minus 26 over 100 to the power of 3. There's a minus there because it's a depreciation. 26 is the percentage change, and 3 is the period of time. In the calculator, that comes to 186.40 ... and we can round that to two decimal places, £186.40. Question 2 is a scientific notation question, and here we've been told that an ant colony occupies an area of 250 hectares, and in each hectare there are 1.22 times 10 to the power of 6 ants, and they want us to work out the number of ants in the whole colony. So what we need to do is multiply those numbers. It's paper 2, so we have a calculator, and in the calculator 250 times 1.22 times 10 to the power of 6 comes to 305 with 6 zeros after it. That's 305 million. So in scientific notation, we want to write 3.05, and then it's going to be times 10 to the power of 8. In this question, we've been given a non-right angled triangle with its 3 sides and asked to calculate an angle. That's going to be a job for the cosine rule. Now on the formula sheet, we're given the cosine rule as cos of A is equal to b squared plus c squared minus a squared all over 2bc. Now remember, capital letters are angles, small letters are sides. So we can find the cos of angle A by doing 18 squared plus 25 squared minus 34 squared over 2 times 18 times 25. In the calculator, that comes to negative 0.23, and then to find the angle A, we need to do the inverse cos of that. That comes to 103.297, which we'll round to 103 degrees. Here we've been given the algebraic inequation 5 times x minus 2 plus 4 is less than 7x plus 8, and they want us to solve this. What we need to do first is break the brackets on the left. We'll get 5x minus 10 plus 4 is less than 7x plus 8. Negative 10 plus 4 is negative 6, so we've got 5x minus 6 is less than 7x plus 8, and then we want to get the x's on the left and the numbers on the right, so we'll subtract 7x from both sides and add 6 to both sides to get negative 2x is less than 14. I like to think of this last part as when you flip the sign, you flip the sign. What we're going to do is divide both sides by negative 2, so the negative has changed sides, so we need to change the sign in the middle to write x is greater than negative 7. In this question, we're told that Charlie's car insurance this year cost £278.40, and that's a 16% increase on last year's cost. They want us to work out last year's cost. Now, if 100% is last year's cost of insurance, then this year is 116%, so we can write 116% is equal to £278.40. Then we'll find out 1% so that we can find out 100%. To find 1%, we divide by 116, and then to find 100, we'll times that by 100, and we get £278.40 divided by 116 times 100 in the calculator comes to £240. In this question here, we've been asked to first factorise y squared minus 6y. Now when we're factorising, we want to look for things in common amongst the terms. In this case, they both have y, so we can take that out as a factor. That gives us y times y minus 6. Then in part B, they want us to simplify y squared minus 6y, which is a question from A, over y squared minus 3y minus 18. So straight away, we'll write the top half as our answer from A. That was y times y minus 6. And then on the bottom, we want to factorise this quadratic into 2 brackets. At the start of each bracket should be terms that multiply to make the first term in the quadratic, y squared. So that's going to have to be y and y. And then the second terms in each bracket should multiply to make negative 18 and add to make negative 3. That's going to be negative 6 and positive 3. The last part here is just to cancel down the y minus 6 on the top and bottom of the fraction, which leaves us with y over y plus 3. In this question here, we've been told about a paperweight in the shape of a cuboid that consists of a hemisphere of red glass surrounded by clear glass. They've given us all the dimensions and asked us to work out the volume of clear glass. So we know that that's going to be the volume of the whole cuboid minus the hemisphere in the middle. Now we can work out the volume of a cuboid as length times breadth times height. That's going to be 7 times 7 times 4, which comes to 196. Then on the formula sheet, we're given the volume of a sphere as 4/3 pi r cubed, so we can work out the volume of a hemisphere by taking half of that. The radius of the sphere is going to be 3 since the diameter is 6, so that's 4/3 times pi times 3 cubed times a half, which comes to 56.5. And then to finish it all off, we just need to do the 196, the whole cuboid, minus the hemisphere, which is 56.54, which comes to 139.45. They asked for two significant figures, so we've rounded it to 140 centimeters cubed. Question 8 asks us to solve the quadratic 3x squared plus 8x plus 1 equals 0 to two decimal places, and the key is in that last part. If you're ever asked to solve a quadratic to a certain amount of decimal places or significant figures, that's an indicator that we should use the quadratic formula. On the formula sheet, that's given as x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a, where a, b and c are the coefficients of the quadratic. So a is going to be 3, b will be 8, and c is the 1 at the end. Subbing that in, we get negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times 3 times 1 all over 2 times 3. Now you can get marks along the way by solving what's under that square root next. 8 squared is 64, minus 4 times 3 times 1 comes to 52. That's negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 52 over 6, and then all it's left to do is put that in the calculator twice, once with the negative and the second time with the positive, and we get negative 0.13 and negative 2.54. In this question here, we've been given the formula f equals 2d plus 3 all divided by e, and they want us to change the subject of the formula to d. What we need to do first is times both sides by e to get rid of the fraction. We end up with e times f equals 2 times d plus 3. Then we should subtract 3 from both sides. We get ef minus 3 is equal to 2d. And then the last step is to divide both sides by 2 to get d equals ef minus 3 all over 2. Question 10 asks us to find the width of this sign, which sort of consists of two circles merged together. We're told that AB is 15 and the radius of each circle is 10. Now, whenever you see a shape that looks like this, we want to be looking for the right angle triangle, like this one here. We know that the hypotenuse is 10, the left-hand side is 7.5, and if we can find that bottom part, which we'll call A, then we can figure out the width of the sign, because it's just going to be 10 plus A, and then the same on the other side. Now, we can find A using Pythagoras. Since we have the hypotenuse, it's going to be a squared is equal to b squared minus c squared. That's 10 squared minus 7.5 squared, which comes to 43.75 in the calculator. And then we square root that to find a, which comes to 6.6. Lastly, the width of the sign then is 10 plus 6.6 plus 6.6 plus 10, which comes to 33.2 centimeters. In this question, we've been given the trig equation 17 sine x plus 1 equals 9 and asked to solve it for values of x. We should first take away 1 from both sides and then divide both sides by 17 to get sine x on its own. Sine x equals 8 over 17. Then to get x on its own, we want to do the inverse sign of both sides. So x is equal to the inverse sign of 8 over 17. And at this point, let's draw a cast diagram. 8 over 17 is positive and we're doing sine, so we're going to tick A and S. In the calculator, the inverse sign of 8 over 17 comes to 28.1, so our two answers are 28.1 and 180 minus 28.1, which comes to 28.1 and 151.9. Here we've been given two algebraic fractions added together and asked to express it as a single fraction in its simplest form. What we need to do is sort of cross multiply to make a common denominator. We'll times the top and bottom of the left fraction by the bottom of the right, and the top and bottom of the right fraction by the bottom of the left. We get 2 times x minus 4 over x plus 5x minus 4 plus 3 times x plus 5 over x plus 5 times x minus 4. And now that the denominators are the same in each fraction, we can write that as one fraction. That will be 2 times x minus 4 plus 3 times x plus 5 over x plus 5 times x minus 4. And then we just break out the brackets and tidy up the top. That's 2x minus 8 plus 3x plus 15, which comes to 5x plus 7 over x plus 5 times x minus 4. In question 13, we've been given a triangle ABC with two of its angles in one of the sides, and they want us to find the length of BD, which is the dotted line in the middle that makes two right angle triangles. Now, the first thing that we should find is angle B, since we have the other two. We can do that as 180 minus 40 plus 30, which comes to 110 degrees. Now that we've got a matching side and angle, we can use the sine rule to find either of the other two sides. On the formula sheet, the sine rule is given as a over sine A equals b over sine B equals c over sine C. We only need two of those fractions in practice. So let's say we want to find the right hand side. We can do a over the sine of 40, which is its matching angle, is equal to 22 over sine of 110. Then we times both sides by sine of 40 and put that into the calculator to get the right hand side as 15.04. We'll take it as 15. Then if we look at the right angle triangle just on the right, then we can do sine rule again using the 15 and the 90 degrees across from it, and then a 30 degree angle to find the dotted line. So we'll say that c, the dotted line, over sine of 30 is equal to 15 over sine of 90, and then times both sides by sine of 30 to get that the dotted line is equal to 15 over the sine of 90 times sine of 30, which comes to 7.5 centimetres in the calculator. Question 14 gives us the rhombus wxyz with two vectors on it, a which goes from z to w and b which goes from z to x. They want us to first express w to x in terms of a and b. Now we can see that to get from w to z, we just do a negative a, and then to get from z to x, it's b, so w to x is negative a plus b. Then in part b, they tell us that m is the midpoint of xy, and they want us to express w to m in terms of a and b. So we already know how to get from w to x, that's negative a plus b, and then to get from x to m, it's just going to be negative a half of a, so w to m can be expressed as b minus 3/2 of a. In question 15, we've been given a sector of a circle with its arc length 15 and radius 12 and asked to find the area of the sector. Now we know two formulas that relate to this question that aren't on the formula sheet. First of all, arc length is equal to angle over 360 times pi times the diameter, and then sector area is equal to angle over 360 times pi times the radius squared. Now we're looking for the sector area, but we can't use that equation just yet since we don't have the angle. But we do have the arc length and we do have the radius, which means we have the diameter, so we can use the arc length formula to work out the angle. We'll say that 15 is equal to the angle over 360 times pi times 24, that's 2 times the radius, and then divide both sides by 24 pi to get angle over 360 equals 15 over 24 pi, and then times both sides by 360 and put it into the calculator, and we get that the angle is 71.61 degrees. Then we'll take that and sub it into the sector area formula, and we'll say that the area is equal to 71.61 over 360 times pi times 12 squared, and the calculator of that comes to 90 centimetres squared. And the last question on the paper is a trig identities question. They want us to express 3 cos squared x minus 1 in the form a plus b sine squared x. So what we need to do is change cos squared x into sine squared x. We know the trig identity, sine squared x plus cos squared x equals 1, so we can rearrange that to say cos squared x equals 1 minus sine squared x. That means we can write 3 cos squared x minus 1 as 3 times 1 minus sine squared x minus 1. We'll break the brackets out and we get 3 minus 3 sine squared x minus 1, and then that 3 minus the 1 at the end leaves us with 2 minus 3 sine squared x.